Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Elliott Olson. I am the Trans, Non-Binary, and Intersex Program Officer at the New Haven Pride Center. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the land on which we are hosting this event. The New Haven Pride Center was founded and operates on the traditional lands of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill, Paugussett, Niantic, and Quinnipiac peoples. Please take a moment, acknowledge and honor the Native people whose lands you occupy and the history of the place that you're in. If you want to learn more about Native lands, you can go to native-land.ca. So, welcome to New Haven Pride Center's continuing programming during Trans Week Awareness. We're bringing you events, art exhibits. There will be a vigil later on when we get to November 20th, tomorrow, which is Trans Day of Remembrance. We will be holding the vigil on the New Haven Green at 3 p.m. So I hope to see you all there for anyone who is able to make it. However, today, we will be talking with some amazing panelists about the experiences of trans youth. Today, we're going to be thinking about youth advocates. We're going to be in conversation with these youth coming together to share their experiences, concerns, predictions about the future of trans advocacy and rights. Most of the public don't really realize that many trans people are aware of who they are at pretty young ages. Today's conversation is an opportunity for community members and allies alike to learn more about what young people are experiencing today. There is no denying trans and gender nonconforming representation has entered the pop culture consciousness. Laverne Cox has made it to the front page of the Times, but you kind of have to ask yourself, how much have things actually changed? How far have we actually come? Visibility changes young people's experiences in coming out, but is it actually followed up by resources and an actual change in lived reality? You know, we're going to be asking questions like, how are resources and public reception any different from what they were 3 decades ago? What do trans youth actually need from the rest of us to secure their actual safety and respect? These are the things that we will be addressing more in the panel centering trans youth voices. So let's dive in. First off, I'm going to be introducing our moderator for today's discussion, Elisio Acosta. Hey, hey.
Hi, everyone. My name's Elisio. I am a crisis and peer support specialist. I work with providing anonymous and confidential services for people who are in crisis. I like to focus on Latinx and Black communities and advocating for them. I also have, I've been working with Peer Pride and helping with bilingual operations and providing competent resources and training in English and Spanish.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know you've done some panels and spaces with us before, so I'm super happy for you to be coming back because it's always a good conversation.
Good to be here, yeah.
Next up, we have Ronan Hernsdorf-Smith. Hey, hey.
Hello.
So just to let the audience know a little bit about you, Ronan is a 17-year-old senior at Avon High School, enjoys doing art and makeup and listening to music, houseplants, and I think, what did you say backstage? A praying mantis next to you?
Yeah.
If
ghost
only I had
everyone
such a
knows
cool.
what that is specifically.
I know you said you first came out, when you were 14 as non-binary, and over time started identifying more along the trans masculine side of things. And I know you've always been into advocacy and social justice. And this has become even more relevant to your life as you encountered your own struggles daily. So just thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. Jay Lounds is our next panelist that will be joining us.
Hello.
Hey. So Jay is 18 years old. He began his transition, 7 years old?
Yeah, 7.
I know you're a current student at Middlesex Community College, which I have to give a shout out to. I also went there. I know you've attended the Trans Health Conference in Philly and Seattle. You were a keynote speaker at a trans pride event in Mass. You were part of the Becoming Me documentary. And you were able to do blockers, right? Hormone blockers before puberty, thankfully.
Yeah.
With the support of your mom. I know that, besides your advocacy work with the trans community, you're also an active participant in political activism, particularly around social injustice, stuff like anti-war, pro-immigration, BLM, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining today.
I could definitely try. I'm sorry.
No. Oh, the comment? Yeah. At some point, that is definitely going to happen. But I do want to get Lex on screen, too. So last but absolutely not least, Lex Allen is joining us. Hello.
Hi.
Super happy to have you in the conversation. Just to let the audience know a little bit about you. You're a senior at Avon High School. You've been out since sophomore year, and really developed a passion for social justice work. I know you're the president also of your school's GSA.
Co-president. I'm lucky enough to share that title with a very good friend of mine. They unfortunately, as it's Tech Week of our fall play right now, they were unable to make the scheduling of this thing, but I'm so happy that I can be a part of that representation for the Avon High School GSA.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Tech Week for theater. That's a whole different kind of tech. But yeah, I will let you all get started. Thanks again, and I know this is going to be a great conversation.
Thanks, Elliott. Yeah, so definitely excited to dive right in here. When I think at least about trans youth, a lot that comes up for me is like the lies that people kind of spread about what it means to be trans youth, what the experience is like, and to kind of open up the conversation. Just wanted to start off with our first question of what are some of the most persistent myths surrounding being trans, specifically being a trans youth, and coming out early that need to be fought. Lex, how about we start off with you?
I mean, I think the easiest one is that it's a phase. I know that when I first came out, my parents were very quick to change my name and how they referred to me, and like people in general were more respectful of my choice in name. But as I started pressuring people more to use the correct pronouns for me and refer to me in ways that are more gender affirming, I definitely felt a lot of pushback because the people around me felt as if, since I had always been a fairly feminine child or interested in traditionally feminine things like cooking and sewing, people assumed that that was an expression of femininity. So I would say like a very common experience is just the deciding, like not believing what trans people say and not respecting the sort of truth of what people have to say about their identities and imposing your own beliefs on them.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Ronan, Jay, anything to add?
I would definitely like to agree with Lex on that. I also was a fairly feminine child, and there was definitely some people were confused when I first came out as non-binary, but I first had to educate people on what non-binary actually meant, and then when they realized what it meant, they were kind of double guessing what I was saying, and definitely the phase one is a huge part of it as well. And I think part of the idea of the phase that is hard to work with is that people tend to not take you seriously if you say you want to transition when you're younger. They tend to be like, well, what if you regret it when you're older and everything? Well, that's a whole other issue, because if you, I'm formulating my thoughts, if you can, like, for example, at my age, at 17, we're supposed to try to figure out what we're going to do with our lives and everything, like go to college or not, if it's not for you, and just figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. And that's a lot of pressure, but it's part of it. And then when people also have that double standard saying like, oh, you don't know what you want to do with your body, it's kind of can be invalidating, very invalidating.
Definitely.
We can hear you a little bit, but very, very rarely.
Okay.
Okay, it's better now.
It's better now. Okay, good. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll just hop into the second question there. Or Jay, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add that there's a myth that a trans person is gonna end up turning someone else trans. And I mean, I have my own experience of having somebody I knew spread a rumor around that I was going to on this trip just to turn other people trans, or to learn how to turn other people trans, which obviously you can't. But I think that's another myth that quite a few people want to believe.
Not contagious.
Definitely.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. That's a really good point that you bring up. I have definitely heard that as well, unfortunately. Kind of along the same lines, actually very much along the same lines. Is there anything specifically about being trans youth that you would like to clarify? I know that we talked about being young and realizing that you're trans. If any of you feel comfortable, explaining what that was like, I can definitely delve into that a little bit as myself. When I was young, I definitely knew that I was trans around the age of like 6 or so. Obviously, that's not everyone's experience, but a lot of us do kind of have an understanding of who we want to be. And I didn't come out, I didn't come out or transition until just recently, but it was something that I knew from a very early point. And I don't know if any of you want to talk about that, about like realizing who you were, and either coming out or having to hold off, and like what that means to you and society and all of that.
So I can talk a little bit about this. I realized, well, so I had in fourth and fifth grade kind of this very intense, not like other girls phase. It was very much, oh, I'm not like other girls because I hate wearing dresses and I hate people when they call me she and I hate when people call me a girl. And I was just kind of very disconnected from femininity at that point, but I didn't really put anything together. And then in, the sixth grade health class, when they're giving you the puberty talk, they're like, you're becoming women. I remember hearing that and just thinking, you know what? I don't think so. I don't think so, actually. And I still didn't have the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling. So I was very lost, honestly. It was very upsetting to like see all the girls around me in that room saying like, yay, we're gonna grow breasts and we're going to go through puberty and we're going to have all these things and people are going to start perceiving us as women. And I remember just feeling like there was something utterly wrong with me because I couldn't relate to that. And I felt like if everyone in the room but me was okay with that, that was a reflection on myself in a negative way. So it took kind of a very long time for me to sort of get everything straight in my mind that like it was okay to not want to be a girl and it was okay to sort of grow up without feeling a connection to your assigned gender. And then it was actually, it's kind of funny how you brought up trans people turning other people trans earlier, because it was only through like my non-binary friend Ari that like I was able to kind of access the vocabulary that allowed me to put the label of trans on myself. But along with that myth, it wasn't that they in any way turned me trans, but they gave me the tools to self-identify, and they gave me the tools to see that there wasn't anything wrong with me in the way that I thought there was.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that. Ronan, do you have anything to add?
Yes. I remember when first doubting my gender when I was 14. Looking back now, there are obviously experiences that I've had when I was younger that kind of were signs of the fact that I don't identify as a woman. And but when I was 14, it was kind of hard for me because I was at a boarding school at the time, and I was in basically like an all girls dorm with 80 other people, and we were constantly being called like ladies and everything. And obviously at a lot of boarding schools, this one included, there's very little, if any, gender neutral dorms. So I spent my entire time there in the girls' dorms, and that was a little difficult for me to like be outspoken about my gender, because I've had many incidences where I've said like, "Oh, I'm non-binary," and then or I identified as non-binary at the time, and I've had people like tell back to me like, "Oh, you can't be because you are in a girls' dorm," and I'm like, "Okay," but that was definitely kind of hindering in me coming out. When I first came out, I came out to an openly gay English teacher that I had at my school, and he was very, very helpful in advocating for me, and I'm definitely very grateful to him.
So when I came out, I like knew very young, and I was lucky enough to have the support of my mom and my sister when I first transitioned. But I definitely did go through the struggle of losing the majority of my family. And I've even had comments said either about me or about my mom when I first transitioned. And so I went through the tough stages of like all of that. And there's been times where because of all that like hatefulness from the family, I've almost detransitioned when I didn't want to, but I did it because of how much stress was put onto me and my mom as when I was so young from just family in general, never mind everyone outside of that. And I'm very glad I didn't because I'm very happy with myself. And a few in my family have started coming along more. But it's definitely, I wouldn't want to go back and to keep my family. I'm happy just how I am now. And I in schools it was okay. I was more stealth, and if anything I would have like close friends and teachers know, and sometimes with friends I would be a little bit that here and there, but overall it was fine until eventually it was that like eventually friends outgrow each other type of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you guys brought up, and definitely really important stuff. I know that all of you kind of touched upon some of the harm that all of these lies have on trans youth. On the flip side, if we were to advocate and have more of a general sense of what it means to be trans and a trans youth, what kinds of opportunities would that open for trans youth?
I apologize. You went kind of quiet for the last part, so I don't think most of us heard what you had to say.
Oh, that's my bad. Yeah, so I was just asking, we talked about some of the harms that have come into some of our lives as a result of the lies that people spread about trans youth. If we were to have more honest conversations, and if more people knew about the realities of trans youth, what kinds of opportunities do you think would open up?
Yeah, I definitely think honest conversations are like super important. I remember actually Ronan and I have recently been involved in an effort to campaign for more gender neutral bathrooms at our school. There have been some problems with transphobia in the gendered bathrooms, so we feel safest in non-binary bathrooms. So um, we were able to have some very somewhat painful to talk about, but also incredibly important conversations with our school principal. And he listened very well, and he acknowledged that what what we were going through was not right, and that the way that we were being treated in the bathrooms was not right. So through having this kind of open conversation and open dialogue, we were able to convince him that we did need more gender neutral bathrooms. So we are currently in stages of both implementing more education for students and teachers and also opening more neutral bathrooms throughout the school. So yeah, open and honest dialogues between cisgender and transgender people are so important because they can really help move progress along.
Yes, definitely. And for the whole bathroom ordeal that Lex and I have been working on, it has been kind of interesting because there was already like, I'll just explain the situation that we were having a little bit more. There was already like Lex and I have both expressed to each other that we were kind of afraid to use the men's room because we didn't want anything bad to happen. And then earlier in the school year, I finally worked up the courage to go into the men's room, and I ended up getting like threatened with violence. And I went to my school's vice principal, and I tried to express how I was feeling, and he kind of just said, I don't know, like come back if anything else happens. And then I talked to a couple more people and finally told Lex about it. And Lex really got the ball rolling because it made them mad, which is understandable. It made me mad too. And I think the conversation we had with our principal was really good. He was very receptive. He was taking notes the whole time. And he has one little thing that was very nice from the meeting was we were talking about how putting your pronouns on the end of your email or like next to your name. I forgot to do it today, but like can, even if you're cis, can like it can make trans people feel more comfortable. And then immediately after that meeting, he added his pronouns to the end of his email, and that felt good to know that someone was listening.
I definitely agree that communication is key, and just knowing that asking questions is always all right. You got to educate yourself to not be ignorant. And so as long as how you're asking the question isn't obvious, like ignorance just being said, then just ask. And yeah.
Yeah. Questions are definitely appreciated, and it's definitely good to keep the questions kind of respectful. Like if you wouldn't want someone asking you something, then you probably shouldn't ask another person like intimate details about their life. But asking questions is very, very important because we're not like a secret society keeping all our knowledge inside.
Definitely. Switching gears a little bit from the school topic, how would y'all respond to parents who say that their kids are too young to know who they are to start transitioning?
I mean, I would say you're never too young to know who you are, because we expect that every child is straight and cis, and the adults around this hypothetical trans kid expect that they are a cisgender heterosexual. And if you know yourself to be a cisgender heterosexual, that is knowing who you are. But when it's the inverse, when it's not the norm, that's the only time when you're too young to know when you are. It's hypocritical, and it's transphobic to assume that just because someone is young, they don't know who they are. It's really invalidating. And if people believed trans youth more, and if people were more receptive to what they had to say, a lot more people would feel comfortable coming out, and a lot more people would be a lot less mentally ill, because people really underestimate the amount of harm that both social and body dysphoria can cause to young minds. I know that personally. I've known my identity since probably sixth grade, and being dysphoric for that long time has taken a massive toll on my mental health. And so I think that if people believed trans youth more, we would be a lot safer.
I think I definitely agree with Lex, and the fact that as soon as like a child is born, in a lot of cases they'll immediately like be told things that they like, or like say like, oh, like if you're born assigned female at birth, people will be like, oh, you're such a pretty girl and everything. And while that is nice, it's also like you're, and then the child would be saying like thank you and everything, and they'll kind of build their identity as a girl. But if someone doesn't feel feel that, and they're kind of honest about it. Like, it's when someone misgenders you, it's a lot of emotion, and a lot of people, like, I remember when I was very, very young, probably around 10, and I had someone, I was playing hide and seek with like a group of kids, and one of them like said "found you, woman" or something like that, which doesn't really make sense. But I started bawling, and then my dad was trying to comfort me, saying like, "Oh, you are such like you're a strong young woman and everything." It just made it. I did not stop crying, and I didn't know why at the time, but a lot of people, it's like saying your kid is too young to know is like saying like, oh, you're not feeling all those emotions, that it feels wrong to be called this sort of thing. It's very, very dismissive, and it's also, I agree with Lex, it's very, very harmful, because spending all these years in like the wrong body is very, very harmful to your mental health. Like, if you can't even like, I don't know, just feel comfortable in yourself, it's hard to go through and accept the challenges that life gives you. It makes everything a lot harder, and making someone do that, like be in the wrong body just because someone isn't willing to listen, is very harmful.
I also think that making your child wait until they're older to transition can cause that child to end up having internalized transphobia, because that's saying like, oh, you're too young because of this or that, and that'll end up going into the child's subconscious, and so later on that could really lead to internalized transphobia and just harmfulness to themselves and to other trans people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that we've kind of danced around this topic a little bit about, there being more trans people, or like everyone's gay now or whatever. What do you have to say about that? About like this, people assuming that more people are trans, or, that whole conversation, especially surrounding trans youth. Again, with this conversation of taking youth seriously, as far as like coming out and their identity.
Yeah, I mean, back to what we were saying before. It's not more people are trans. It's more people know they're trans, or it's not more people being trans. It's more people sharing that they're trans, because in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, there's been a huge amount of progress in the pride movement, and so many more people feel comfortable sharing that they are queer or gay in some way, and that's not more people being gay, that's more people feeling comfortable. And it's the same for trans people. As there are more and more mainstream transgender celebrities, as there are more shows and films representing us, as there's more discourse about how to properly treat trans people, then people will have access to that vocabulary and be able to say, that sounds like me, maybe I can look more into it. And if you're questioning your gender, then at the end, if more people are questioning their gender, then more people are going to come to the conclusion that they may not be the gender they were assigned at birth.
I definitely agree. It's not more trans people or gay people. It's just more people feeling comfortable and safe enough to come out a lot of the time. Like, if you think back to even just a few decades ago, it was a lot harsher of a place. It still is a harsh place to be, but it was even worse. Like, it often wasn't very safe to come out. So a lot of people were just kind of hiding in their identities, or like kind of just living in the wrong body be safe. And you think back to some of those like historians writing about people like, oh, like they were loved to dress and act like a man, but they were definitely a woman. And it's just like, okay, that sounds about right, I guess. But I've definitely heard the discourse about being like coming out as non-binary is trendy and everything. It's not, and it's not like people a lot of times don't realize that being trans isn't all fun and games. Like there is a lot of dysphoria, there's a lot of bigotry, and everything along those lines. So I've had people. I was at this one place where they said sit with the gender you identify as, and since I identified as non-binary at the time, they didn't know what to do with me, so they just let me sit with anyone. And then I remember this one girl was like, "Oh, if I say I'm non-binary, then I can sit with this guy I like." And I was like, "Okay, that's very invalidating because just like kind of claiming yourself to, or making jokes about like, oh, I'm just going to say I'm this, is taking away from the fact that it is an actual like valid identity." And yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like, I think now it's a little bit, it's starting to get more okay to want to discover your own self and see what feels true to yourself. Whereas before, it was a lot harder to even question, like, oh, I feel like I'm like myself better as this type of person in these types of clothes. And it was just a lot harder to feel that way, where people are like, no, that's wrong. It's just horrible. Don't ever even think that. And then it closes it off from them even trying to think it, and just adds on to them becoming transphobic because of what they're keep being told. Whereas now it's starting to become more accepting to just try and discover yourself for who you truly are.
For sure. Yeah, I really appreciate everything that you all said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. Switching gears again a little bit, what are some challenges that trans youth face in the medical field?
I can definitely say that even just like regular like doctor appointments or check-ins, I recently went to having a doctor's appointment, and my correct name was on the sheet. They just chose to refer to me as my dead name, which was interesting because we were like, oh, we put it in there that Ronan goes by this. And they're like, oh, it was on there, but they just didn't refer to it. And I also have had instances where I was talking to my doctor, my like general care doctor, and I told him, oh, just let you know, in case of like any like back issues or anything, I am binding. And he asked me, what's a binder? And I'm like, okay. And he's a pediatrician, and it's just kind of interesting to see that there really isn't that knowledge. And he's been in the field for a very, very long time. So it was just very surprising to me that there was kind of that ignorance on the topic.
Yeah, I recently, like last week, had an appointment to discuss getting a hysterectomy finally. And when I got there, it seemed like it was going to be an accepting place. I was even recommended by Middlesex Hospital. And so I went there, and in the appointment, it seemed all right. And I mean, it was a GYN appointment, so I was already feeling very, very vulnerable and uncomfortable. And to later be told that I would have to wait till 21 just because in the past there were few people that regretted their decision. And me being someone that transitioned at 7 was lucky enough to go on blockers and already have way more multiple reasons why I would never want my own kids. It was very hurtful and very distressing, and it's really hard when, especially because it was a recommendation, and I think it's just doctors really need to either be taught more, and if they refuse to actually learn, then they just shouldn't be in the field.
And
Yeah,
I also,
definitely.
sorry.
What?
Oh, I just apologize for interrupting you.
Oh, okay. I definitely agree. I think that like the amount of awkwardness that happens at doctor's appointments. I actually, for my sophomore end of the year human rights project, I talked about transgender issues in the medical field. So this is something that I'm pretty well acquainted with. And I'm not up to date on the statistics recently, but apparently up to or over, possibly over 90% of transgender or non-binary individuals have delayed or just not gone to doctor's appointments because they felt that they would not be accepted. And some transgender youth report that they try to avoid doctor's appointments as much as possible because of those same reasons. So those kind of institutional barriers can really just make sure trans people, even if they're not trying to medically transition, just do not have access to the same resources that cis people do.
And I wanted to add to what Jay was saying. There have been a couple times recently where I have been recommended to go to a women's health place, and I was just like, I really don't want to do that. That doesn't sound very fun for me. I'm sure there's probably some accepting people, but just the fact that it's like on the front of the building, women's health, and then me walking in there like, oh, hello, it activates my dysphoria a lot. And that's why I honestly think that the work that like more inclusive places are doing, like Planned Parenthood, is very, 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 very valuable.
Definitely. Let's just pretend for a second that I was a parent of a trans kid. What's like a message that you would tell me as a parent of a trans kid?
I would say definitely just like if you have a trans kid, or honestly, if you have a kid at all, you should educate yourself on stuff like that, because you as their parent or guardian or carer have a obligation to them to protect them, and that includes not just their physical safety but their mental safety and stability. And as we've discussed before, the transphobia and dysphoria can have massive consequences on your mental health. So if you have a trans kid, just educate yourself. Know that if they say they want to use a different name or use a different set of pronouns, then respect that. And if you have questions, ask them, because if your kid is feeling comfortable enough with you to share their identity and share this hugely personal part of themselves with you, then they want you to ask questions, and they're putting themselves out there for you to support them. And it's really important that you both educate yourself. You don't have to ask them if you feel too awkward. There are so many resources on Google. There are tons of books where you can see what experiences trans people have gone through. And you want your child at the end of the day to be comfortable. So you have to work to do that and work to make sure you yourself are accepting individual.
I agree. I definitely is important to know that as a parent, you should be prepared for like any parts of your kid's identity. Um, and educating yourself is so important on that, like, because not everybody is going to have a cishet like able-bodied child, and like just educating yourself so you can be more accepting, because I know a lot of kids really do look up to their parents, and their acceptance means a lot to them, and I know that's the case for me as well. And I think one huge thing that I've heard a lot, not necessarily from my own family, but from other families, is the parents saying to their kid, "Oh, I'm grieving for like the daughter I never had. I thought you were going to be," or something like that, or the woman I thought you were going to be. And that is, it's hard to hear that as a trans kid and someone that you're related to, because you're not dead. You're just like becoming happier and healthier in your true self. And like having that kind of guilt can make it harder for a person to come to you about that sort of thing.
Also, to add, definitely if your child is trans, the only person that can say that they're trans is your child. So after they transition and all that, no matter what, you can never out them to anyone, because that puts your child at risk, and it can be very dangerous for them. And especially in school environments, it can be very harmful, and that puts them at a lot of risk. And just remember, the only person that can out your child is your own child, unless they give you spoken permission, and even then.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I think it's also important to like not kind of impose your own wishes upon your child, like, because your child is definitely like your child. I don't know, there's no other way to say it really, but they are their own person, and telling them like, oh, I don't think you should like, for example, medically transitioning, I don't think you should do this part of medically transitioning because I've heard bad things about it, or something like that. It can just be kind of damaging, because what if that child did want that surgery, and then they like, well, don't feel comfortable coming to you to talk about it. And I think also one thing that I've had to educate people on is, when you're talking about your child in the past before they came out or transitioned, don't use their old name and pronouns, because they're still they're still trans their whole time. And sorry, that didn't make sense. They're still trans, and just because they weren't out then doesn't make them any less of, like, for example, for me, like, doesn't make me any less of a transmasculine person. The fact that sorry, I didn't throw in any thoughts, but I've had to correct people on saying, like, because my little sister is also she's also trans, and we've had to work together to educate our family on like, hey, just because I was a little kid and didn't really know my identity yet doesn't mean you can refer to me by the wrong name and pronouns. I'm still for me, I'm still Ronan. I'm just, it was before I really knew myself that much.
Yeah, that's really important. And all of us have kind of talked about resources and education a lot here today. Are there any specific resources that you used and or would suggest to parents or trans youth?
I know that I actually came in contact with the New Haven Pride Center because of the whole bathroom situation that Lex and I are dealing with, because they became very highly recommended, and the wonderful staff have been helping me advocate for myself to my school administration, and just like having that support was really helpful for me. But for parents, I would say like tonight there is a Zoom call for my local library where they're having a trans activist come and speak, and it's just for parents and carers and guardians to come, or anyone who has questions to come and just ask questions and learn more about like non-binary and trans identities. And I think if you do some research, there's a lot of good resources out there. Like I always say to people, like Google is right there. Like you see the thing, it's like millions of search results in like 0.06 seconds or something like that. So there are a lot of resources out there.
Definitely. I also, in seeking to educate my parents, I gave them the book Transmission: My Quest to a Beard by Alex Birdie. That's essentially where he goes kind of into detail talking about his personal experience being a trans man and his transition. So if you're looking into trying to support your trans child, or you're trying to find out more information in general about what it's like to be a transgender man, I would definitely recommend that book, because it helped me a lot when I was trying to educate myself in like my formative, like little baby cocoon trans years. And then it also helped educate my parents.
I don't know. I don't know if it still goes on, but there would be different panels at this Philly Trans Health Conference, and I honestly forget what part of the year it is in. But I'm sure if you look it up, it'll be easy to find, and they have all sorts of panels. And if you have children with you, they have areas for just the children to be like taken care of while you attend all the panels, and because some of them are just for adults.
I really appreciate hearing about all those resources, and I'm sure our audience do too. Yeah, there's definitely a lot out there in forms of books. I'm sure there's podcasts, although I don't really know about any off the top of my head. But I know of trans people who do have podcasts, and I'm sure they discuss, trans topics as well. Of course, there's YouTube, Google, as was mentioned, and obviously just speaking to trans people that you know is also a really great way to learn, kind of like we were talking about asking questions and opening up some of those discussions. Um, but I just want to thank everybody for everything that you had to bring to the table and all the conversations that we had here today. It was lovely hearing from all three of you. And yeah, those are the questions that we have here. I don't know if we have any in the chats, but yeah.
I don't think so. I'm looking at the same as well. Hi y'all. That was such a good conversation. Seriously, between talking about the different issues that trans youth face in particular, I don't know. I firmly believe that we as a community will grow the most when we empower young people to lead on the issues that impact them. right? It's a one-to-one. The people who experience it probably know the most about it. And so I'm so happy to like do conversations like this. Also, I'll say, Elisio, right? You were asking about the resources for parents. Um, I will say, Growth Therapy has a support group for parents of trans kids. I wanted to plug that. Later today, we'll actually be having a parent talk. Um, Reminding myself real quickly, that will be at 4 p.m. About kind of supporting your trans kids. So you can tune in later if you want to know more about that, if you are a parent watching. Yeah, in a better world, when we listen to youth and actually change our spaces and communities to show them respect and trust, we see, right, you all grow into be resilient leaders. But a lot of the time right now, I feel like the harm that comes from not having, right, the power to make decisions about, affirming care, your own body, I'm talking about the medical field a lot. It's such a double standard. Puberty blockers have been used for years for cis kids. Say if someone gets a period too early, but it's only an issue, right, when a trans kid comes and asks, oh, maybe this is something that should be an option for me. Anyway, thank you so much for the conversation. A special thank you to our amazing moderator, Elisio. And also to everyone watching as well. And thank you for joining us for today's program. I feel super lucky to be part of the New Haven Pride Center. And, we have dynamic programming here year round. We have support services. We have a trans youth group if anybody in this panel is interested in that. Not to push too much. Case management, gender affirming closet, binders, wigs, comfy t-shirts. We do performance art exhibits, panels like this, a lot. You can find out more about our upcoming programming at newhavenpridecenter.org. On our homepage, on the left-hand side, it has a calendar with all the upcoming lists. You can get the whole T-Door schedule there as well. Tomorrow will be the last day of all of our programming around Trans Week of Awareness and tomorrow Trans Day of Remembrance. So make sure to check it out to see what you can catch in the meantime. If you're looking for more ways to connect, you can follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Facebook, it's just New Haven Pride Center. Same for Instagram. If you want to find us on Twitter, however, it's New Haven Pride. Something else to keep in mind for panelists, moderator, and audience alike. If you missed an event, if you're interested in seeing some of our past panels, we have a YouTube channel. We archive it all. It is all there. You can see all the different conversations we've had. If something is coming up and you're at school, you're at work, you're going to miss it, it's going to be there. You can go back and watch it. If you have any concerns, comments, questions, whether you were looking for resources, a parent may be looking for some direction, a youth may be looking for some groups or trans queer-friendly resources, you can feel free to contact me specifically. My email is trans@newhavenpridecenter.org. However, if you just want to contact the center and kind of poke around and see what else we have going on, that email is info, same thing, @newhavenpridecenter.org. Lastly, as a pro tip, if you enjoyed today's program, please consider joining as a member. It's completely free. You can do that by going to newhavenpridecenter.org/join now. So if you're interested in supporting our work as we build community spaces, host conversations like this, workshops, social spaces, events, art exhibits, right? The big list. Consider making a donation. We are a nonprofit. We are run by and for the community. We rely on your donations to have panels like this. If you go to newhavenpridecenter.org/donate, you can donate there. You can also see a breakdown of what your donation, whatever amount you are able to give, actually does for us. Whether you want to, say, provide enough for a whole panel to happen, or maybe just for some supplies. You can actually see the real breakdown of how you're supporting. And I think that's really good, because a lot of the time we donate to somewhere and we're like, that was the black hole. I have no idea what I just did, but I hope it helps. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, thank you, everybody. Y'all had a great convo, and I feel privileged to be part of it. Thank you to Elisio again for moderating. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.